holy cow, brother, you got a lot of good stuff.
There's a guy who lives not far from me, and 10 years ago, I got back into the game and I started buying this stuff from him because he was like a Hall of Famer. It's like, whoa, I don't know who these folks are.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, oh, geez. And he was like, so it's like, well, I didn't know you could actually get all this stuff. And, I know you're more of a vintage guy as well. So
yes.
Suddenly it's like, hey, that's a bad thing for me to know that I can actually acquire this stuff. And that's what we've been doing. And with the eye toward building a handbook, I don't know if you know the Zach handbook for APBA baseball.
I know very little about APBA and the APBA community, as I've just been back to YouTube over the last 2 years. And APBA, gosh, I think I own the original, I owned the board game back in 90, I want to say 99, 2000.
Okay.
So I came to APBA really late. And then when we moved, I donated or gave it to a friend or something. And I just recently bought it in hockey, forgetting, I'd seen some of your videos, seen a couple other videos, and I said, I've got to get APBA back because there's something for me magical about it. There's something, one of the things that I saw your video when you talked about the font, that typeface, and I immediately said, this guy's a kindred spirit, because there's something about old school typeface that just it's classic to me. It's there is an aesthetic that is important to me. It doesn't have to be pretty. It has to feel like a classic type. Just something about it. And that's when that's that and watching Dave Garner's APBA hockey. I said, I'm going to order these and I'm going to grab my favorite season. And I'm just getting back to APBA. And I got to be honest, I only played it twice, maybe in 99, 2000.
Okay.
With a buddy. We really liked it and we just never got back to it. And I never thought of playing it solo. Never crossed my mind when I was 29 years old to play these games solo.
Interesting.
That's how crazy I was. I was inventing my own game that was designed to be solo play.
Give a proper entree to yourself, Jason, of Flash Sports.
Oh yeah. Well, my name is Jason Graham. I have a YouTube channel, Flash Games. I've changed the name a couple of times. It's Flash Sports now because I play so many other games. My goal is to be positive and to share just whatever game I get. I want to share it. I'm not about tutorials. I don't want to necessarily teach games. I want to do them correctly if I can. I want to try to be. I want to try to do them rules as written. But I am first and foremost about sharing this brilliant hobby and trying to get share it with as many people as possible. So that's what I do. I'm a game designer. I have written, manufactured, published, and sold my game from 2001 to 2004 until it sold out. Sold it all over the world, and then it became cost prohibitive back then. I had to manufacture 1,000 decks of cards, and so basically I made no profit on it. And then I just never got back to it until I came back by accident. And I talk about this in the Digital to Dice podcast.
Yes.
With Dave and Ron, how Kevin Elias recognized me and said, I have your game. And it's amazing because I hadn't seen my game in 15 years.
It's quite an amazing story. I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to bring that up. That's the June 17th, 2020 podcast of Digital to Dice. And I believe they're big APBA hockey folks as well.
Was that a year? That was a year ago to the day?
Pretty much, yeah.
That's crazy.
So there you go. There's something about gaming and the vibe of gaming, talking about aesthetic, you talked in that podcast about the dynamics of your game. We're going to just start jumping and rabbit holing all over here. I had some formula here, but
you go ahead. Don't let me wreck it.
No. It's better to go in the moment, I think, but I just did want to elaborate a bit on your career. Now you're a fitness business owner as well.
Yes.
You played some sports.
Yeah, I played, I'm not a big guy. I'm like 5'2". I was always the smallest kid on the team. I did some summer amateur boxing at a local club in our old town where, maybe 6 fights at a little club called Tiger's Gym in a mall in our old hometown. That was my first foray into trying boxing. I wrestled briefly. I was a horrific wrestler, not a good wrestler at all. And I love football. My first passion was boxing as a child, but when I discovered football, all bets were off. I've coached 8th grade football, defense. My best friend was the head coach, and I was the defensive coordinator. That was a great fun. I had aspirations of being a coach because I was never going to make it as a player. I've always been athletic, although I have a chronic illness, but it never stopped me from competing. But yeah, so I have a background there. Football, I became obsessed with football in my 20s. Just obsessed with it. Yeah, crazy. And it drove me to play everything I could get on the PC and try to rekindle what I had as a child. Statis Pro football was my first love in tabletop gaming, but I never dreamt again of playing. Yeah. Now, yeah, the Paydirt games, Statis Pro, Bound, Paydirt, those were the games that launched my career thanks to my big brother. He introduced me to those when I was 8, and that was it. That was it. I was hooked. And my game came about as what is the old term? Necessity is the mother of invention.
Right.
I was home alone, 1996, sitting in the living room with my wife, and I said, "Yeah, I would love to play Statis Pro again, but I don't have it, and it's 3 hours long, and you need a partner, you need a buddy that's going to dedicate." We're all young married guys with careers, and I said, "I'm just going to invent my own based on flash cards." And I had no idea that there were already so many games on the planet. I didn't discover Stratomatic until I was 26 years old.
Right.
And all of those things were like, holy cow, there's a whole universe of stuff outside of Sports Illustrated. So when Avalon Hill went bankrupt or quit, I was heartbroken because that was all I knew of sports, tabletop sports. APBA I discovered at 29, right? To find out APBA existed back to 51, 58 was like, what? Where have I been?
Right.
And I was shocked. When I first saw APBA, I was like, what the heck is this? Because Statis Pro was my measuring stick. It's like, fast action, all the players, you can understand the cards with a glance, and the sheets where you set up your offense and your defense. And when I saw APBA the first time, I'm like, what? And then I said, what? You got ranges for different parts of the football field? What? And the funny thing was, my buddy and I played it. We instantly recognized it. First game ever. I think we played the Broncos and somebody. And when we recognized the charts, gave us the realistic, the realities in those ranges of what teams could do between the 30 and between the 15 and the 20. And we both were like, because we played football. We both had played football our whole lives. And we both went, holy cow, these guys get it. And we just never got back to it because, again, we were adults with children, I didn't have children, but he had children. And these things were eye-opening for me. My game was solely designed for you to sit down, run a huddle, down the field as fast as possible. You can play a full sim of my game, every single snap in about 30 minutes by yourself, super fast. Probabilities were built into the deck, so you didn't have to worry about defense, right? It was designed for solitaire play, and that's where I ended up. I made it because I didn't have anything. And now it's like, I can't imagine not playing anything solo. I can make anything solo. What was my problem?
That's and that's been a big point of contention in the APBA world. See, I started with Avalon Hill as well, more on the war game side. Rick Tolfan's War, Third Reich squad leader, and Paydirt. Like I just held up here, the Paydirt. I believe you're also in a title bout, which I have.
That was my love it.
But you actually go back to, I think if I heard correctly in the podcast with those the folks at Digital to Dice, that you were kind of, the necessity was that you were kind of tired of playing some of the computer games at the time.
Oh yeah, I got fed up with having to update computers and wrestle with trying to get stuff to work. This was before there was some stability in computer gaming, and I was DOS. So I actually owned APBA Football for DOS before I ever saw the board game. So my first APBA I thought was a PC game, right? And I had Lance Hafner. I don't remember Lance Hafner, the old DOS-based football, college basketball. Lance Hafner had made a whole slew of brilliant text-based sports sims. I had actually Action PC Football when it was DOS, version 3.1C. So I was playing PC games alone. But there's for me, computers still lack a certain engagement for me. I want that tangible. I want to see. It's like reading books. My wife loves the Kindle. I got to have books. I just got to have books, man. I love my books. And like I said, when I saw that video when you were talking about the typeface and the font, and the aesthetic and how there's something that just is you groove to that. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's a kindred spirit, because just seeing those boxes behind you, it's like, let's go back in time, because that is sweet to me.
Exactly.
Like something about it.
And you're also more about, as the kids say these days, or down with the older seasons. Your APBA experience, your videos lately have been on the 58 Colts, and I believe your wife, when you sent your game out originally, your wife designed the game box based on the 58 Colts, which
So I found an old hardback book, large format hardback book, in an old used bookstore in my old hometown. It's like a prized possession, and it was literally published in 1959 of the 58 championship game. So I found that when I was probably in my 20s, and I went, this is magical. And I had her sketch the art for my game from that book. So that Lenny Moore image is from a photograph, an old vintage photograph in the book of Lenny Moore cutting back. And then Unitas standing, about to get hammered from behind by, I think it was Robustelli or somebody, right? So all those images were actually photographs, vintage photographs in that old book. And she just drew them from visual looking. But I wanted it to have a sketched, illustrated, kind of old school feel to it. And black and white, everything's black and white. Aesthetic is not my specialty. I am more of a designer and more of a probabilities guy and a designer guy. So when it comes to visual, I'm not very good with it. My wife's an artist, so that's her thing. But I know what I like. I mean, I can tell you what I love about APBA, right? I can tell you that suits my mentality.
Well, and you can see it in the background here, right over my head, is the sketch of that original box, and it's kind of similar to your wife's aesthetic is right in line, that kind of lighter brushstroke, pencil shade, light and shade kind of a thing. So there's that really deep connection to games. It's not just about accuracy, and your game is there's speed to your game, Flash Football, and you're in the 3rd edition revisions, I believe, right now.
Yes sir. Sir.
So you have a Facebook group of that, and as I understand, you're posting some of the older, you're creating charts for older seasons, or
and I give everything away. So everything I do now is print and play. So that Facebook group, since when the quarantine happened, I had nothing to do. For 8 weeks, I was unemployed. The state shut us down, and my business, we're so close to people, they shut us down. So I had nothing to do. So I sat down and started to go back to my old files and old ideas, and started to create and design and develop. And I wanted to be able to do something for fellow man. And I've said this before, I make no bones. People suddenly were trapped at home, and they were trapped with, and gadgets and TV and video games. But so many people want to try these things, but they don't know where to start. So many people want to try APBA, but let's not kid ourselves. APBA's cost prohibitive if you want seasons. Sure. I think it's priced great for your basic sets, but it's a little expensive for guys to try APBA. But so I wanted to do something to share my stuff and let people try and play, and that may or may not have the financial means nor the gamble. They want to gamble their hard-earned money during their quarantine, and then find out they hate it, right? So that was one of the things. The only thing I could really do to give back to my fellow man was to give away some of the stuff I design and develop, and there's not much else I can do for people, right? That's what I could do.
Nice. Now your game, just a couple of takeaways really quickly. Included in your game, it's a combination. There's an action deck. There's a combination of it's really more offense driven. You're kind of the quarterback, but you're not necessarily. You're kind of like Joe Montana, but you're using the players. It's, as you said, it's based on probabilities of what's going to happen with a type of play in a certain situation. You've got weather effects. You've got substitutions built in. You've got coaches, intangibles, and you've got, I'm going to forget the last thing that was in there. It is the home field advantages built into the cards. What is the elevator pitch, or if you will, the virtual unboxing? When I go and get Flash Football, what do I get?
You get a complete football simulation that can be played alone by yourself in 30 minutes, every snap. And all you need to do is shuffle the deck, divide it into a timing deck and a dead deck. The timing deck is your quarter. When that card's over, second quarter starts, shuffle the cards, break them up, go again. I invented this in 96, copyrighted in 97. this idea of the timing deck and an off deck. You see it now in lots of games. So there are other teams that do other games that do it. Also, you could you could play it head to head with my advanced rules of formations. You can call offensive formations, defensive formations to have a head to head game going. And you could replay based on my historical team list. They were charts of like the NFC 1984 NFC teams. You could transport very quickly those ratings over to the score sheet, match them up against the other team, and very quickly see it. You had everything right in front of you. You could knock out games. My game had a career mode that no one else had done at the time, right? We're talking about 97, a career mode built in, so you could, at the end of the season, simulate off season. It has a quick game feature, so you can simulate quarter by quarter, bang, 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 in 4 quarters, it simulates. It had a gambling aspect in the revision where you actually could look at the point spread prediction and then play the quick games. Yeah. So it has a lot of those things. And the probabilities were designed based on NFL. My team charts were designed to affect the actual probabilities of yardage per play based on an era. So you'll see like the 58 teams have really good pass defenses because nobody threw the ball for 4,000 yards back in the day. Rushing, you would see, Jim Brown and guys like that with threes. They would affect those probability numbers. Now, the probabilities weren't just in the actual yardage probabilities. They were the probabilities of interceptions, sacks, but also who touches the ball. So originally I designed it as flash quarterback. Your goal, so there were no quarterbacks rated in my original game. You were Joe Montana in the huddle with Craig, with Rathman, with Rice, with Clark, with that, and your goal was to call the plays that suited down and distance and try to get Roger Craig and that +3 involved. But the probabilities that Roger Craig touches the ball, there's a give and take risk reward with inside run versus outside run, long pass versus, and of course mine are named after the concepts, passing schemes, which is progression passing, which is the West Coast drop back, read, throw. And then timing, which is the most traditional passing in all of the history of football's timing. Almost everybody drops back, and timing was that's all you did in football up until Sid Gilman and some guys started to tweak the ideas of passing, right? So, and you didn't have to worry about your defense. Your defense was a core team rating that just affected the enemy on every snap. Didn't have to worry about pass percentage completions. They were built into the deck. Now you could make them better by calling more progression passes. If you abuse timing passes, you're going to have more interceptions, more sacks, more incompleted passes. So you had to kind of risk reward, weigh what you needed when you wanted to do it. Yeah. So that was the design, and you could play a game in 30 minutes.
So what cards am I? So you say you've got formation cards. I know you talked about the running backs, and the +3 is your Dickerson, as you'd mentioned before in other podcasts. So what am I looking at as the setup? And you've got videos for this.
Spiral bound rule book, and in the back was a football field with charts on that. You could flip it open. There were charts here, but also it came with a football field that folded. And you would unfold that out of the book, made a big football field with all the charts on that field, right? So then you have a random number for visiting team and home team at the bottom right corner of the fast action card. The random, so that's part of the built-in home and away factor. So the random number on the visitor side would produce less 1 to 6 was the variable, but it would produce less 6s and more 1s, etc. So being at home versus for all kicking, punting, field goals, PATs, the visitor number was at a slight disadvantage, but enough to affect the game over a course of a year or over the course of the game. And it's just a deck of cards. Your team list, which would be all the teams with all the pertinent positions and ratings that you would transcribe over to the score sheet. Also in the book was the quick game score sheet, the quick game weather, and then, of course, the game weather that's actually for the simulated game. And those always affect ratings. So when somebody says, gosh, Eric Dickerson's a +3 every time he touches the ball. Yes, he is. But when he faces that team with a -2 defense, he's always going to be only a +1. But when weather shows up, Dickerson could be turned into a 0. I wanted weather to be a factor because part of my joy of old school football is I can remember those deluges. I can remember those mud fests, right? They didn't play on grass, by the way, in 1958. They played on manure and mud. Good luck at the end of the season when it was on. Thank God it was a black and white 1958 championship game, because it would have been brown on brown. So it might as well have been black and white.
So now, what is your goal? You're a student of the history of the game. You appreciate more the older seasons, maybe not necessarily all the quote dead ball pre-78
Right.
seasons, but you want to know about the 72 Dolphins, which is one of the most popular replays, certainly in APBA, probably in all football simulations. But what is your view of the game as someone who's played the game and someone who is a student plus someone who is encountered a game like Paydirt, which is kind of a team-based stats thing, and you've encountered Stratomatic and APBA, which are varying degrees of player-to-player kind of action. So what was your ultimate goal in designing Flash? Is it more about speed of play? I think you talked about the dynamics of the game, or it's not maybe statistical accuracy, if I'm understanding.
Oh, well, it will produce statistical accuracy, but it won't necessarily reproduce Dan Marino's 5,200 yards, 48 touchdowns, right? But it will produce, because again, it's the probabilities of the deck will produce NFL statistical averages, modified by extremes. Eric Dickerson is an extreme, but the average running back is a +1, not an extreme. But Dickerson would be an extreme, right? A -2 run defense is a big extreme, because it's going to affect teams on a big way when it comes to averaging 2 yards a carry versus 5 yards a carry. But aside from that, it's pretty statistically accurate, but it won't necessarily, it's not a replay game. So so my team list was to capture the personality of the teams. Okay. So it wasn't to say, oh, if you play this, Eric Dickerson will get 2,100 yards rushing. It depends on how much you run him and how often you hit the HB rule. Okay. So when I look at the game like Paydirt to me is a matrix game. It has a controlled variable with special dice, and it controls those probabilities through those very interesting dice, right? That was the first mechanic I know to Paydirt as a kid, right? So even as an 8-year-old kid, when my brother showed me the dice and he said, 3s come up more than anything else, that's all I needed to hear. And then I knew instantly, look for between 32 and 34, baby, and I'm going to try to hit those numbers. So I could game Paydirt, but meanwhile, my brother ain't stupid, and my enemy, he's like, hey, this kid's trying to hit the breakaway on number 34 on outside draw play, so we're gonna call that, and then the goal then is the chess match. He's gonna try to stop my draw. So right, but we spent one summer playing 256 games, me and my buddies. We played every single game of the whole schedule in one summer, tracked stats, and it's a pretty remarkably accurate game. However, this again, I wouldn't say it was an exact replay game, as it produced numbers that weren't quite on spot. I don't think any tabletop game in the world is going to be perfect, unless it's solely based on percentages, where you have no control over anything but percentages, right? You just roll the dice and see what happens. So you can control percentages. But that's boring. Who wants to do that, right?
Right. And you've designed, there is a head-to-head component in your game.
Yeah. But I designed it. When you say, what was my goal?
Yeah.
My goal was solitaire play, simple. I could teach it to a 6-year-old kid, and your 6-year-old kid could get in the huddle and he could have a great time, or your wife. A lay person could get a kick out of it. They just got to call a play, flip a card, and we have instant results. So one of my complaints is I discovered second season, for instance, in 1999. I bought the original second season, and it was brilliant. The ratings are brilliant. This was amazing chart books, but to this day, it was cumbersome to me. It's like, it's a lot of work for a 2-yard run by the fullback, right? I go through all these machinations and I get 2 yards for the fullback. Now, I'm not knocking it. I love it. I think it's a brilliant game. My game, you just call inside run, flip the card, 2 yards, fullback, +1 halfback, 3 yards, right? So you knew instantly what the result was. So that allowed you to just call plays and move the ball down the field at whatever rhythm felt natural to you. And then, of course, if you played your buddy would just, and here's how my game worked. You didn't hide your formation. So if I'm in short yardage, I'm in short yardage. There's no such thing as saying short yardage, right? So they would have to put a penny on the board, and I could look over there and say my brother was in short yardage. He's taken away Eric Dickerson. So what he's doing is he's taken away my strength, but he's also challenging me to throw the ball when he knows I don't want to throw an interception. I have to decide. I'm the one in control of my huddle. I'm the one in control of snapping the ball here. Do I want to risk it, or do I want to accept the fact that he's taking away Eric Dickerson? Well, I call outside run anyway, flip the card, and guess what? It's a 3-yard run. It's not to Dickerson. It's to the backup running back. He's a -1. He got the right D. I've just lost 3 yards. Damn, he beat me, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's like APBA. To me, APBA should be all about formation. You come to the line of scrimmage, you glance over there. They're either in a standard, they're in a pass D, or they're in a run D. It's pretty simple, right? And I should be able to see that as a quarterback to the line of scrimmage.
Interesting. Yeah, that's
my biggest issue with football, and people who I don't think really understand it from a coach, because I coach defense. So I've read, I don't know how many books on defense. You don't call pass defenses. You don't call run defenses. That's just not what defense does. Defense gets in a formation to provide you advantages against certain attacks. So I'm in a nickel, not because nickel's a guaranteed pass coverage, because it gives me a faster play or deeper to help protect against the pass, right? Anybody who watches football understands this. But every board game calls it a pass D, a run D, a blitz D. No. They're formations designed to restrict what you can get away with, right? So when I play APBA, I'm thinking this is the 6-3 umbrella defense of the 1950s and 60s. When I'm in G, I'm saying to Johnny Unitas, you're going to have to run through 9 guys to get past us, and I got to hope my three backs back there can cover these guys if Johnny U takes advantage of it, right? So for me, defense is about formations and what kind of talent you put on the field to execute those formations, right? But games don't do that. They take a shortcut, pass defense.
Well, that brings up the point about playability, as you say, for the lay person versus the student. I mean, again, one of the big issues with APBA is the basic and master games and rules. You call blitz, you call ground defense. In the old game, you call nickel dime. You know these things that you can do. And I just wonder if your game kind of eliminates that. It's built in, so you've got that, like the substitution, for instance.
Right.
So you
offensive line. So quarterback and offensive line and coach are built into the intangibles rating, right? So if a team is a +2 intangibles, that means they got a really good coach, really good quarterback, generally a good offensive line, right? They're built in. The deck of cards probability of average per carry is also reflecting the offensive line for the most part in general. And on defense, it's just versus run versus pass. That's your team's ability to reduce yardage versus those things. So either your team is going to be good at it, they're not going to hurt you, they're not going to help you, or they're going to be really bad at it. So when I sit down with Eric Dickerson in 1984, and I'm a +3 Eric Dickerson, and I look over there and I'm playing against, I'm trying to think who's bad then. I'll just assume it's a bad run defense. And they're a +2. That means every time Dickerson touches the ball, he's going to get 5 yards, right? That's just minimum, not counting what I might flip on that card, right? So in the sense, my game creates the nickel and dime back. So Dickerson was known as the nickel and dime back. He's going to get 5, 7, 10, 12. Fumble. That was, you shouldn't have ran. You ran one time too many, right? Yeah. So mine is a risk reward gambling mechanism.
Okay.
So the best way to see my game is that it's NFL averages. It's 3rd and 1. You got Eric Dickerson. I can gamble on an inside run, but the fullback touches the ball more on the inside run. Well, that ain't going to help me because my fullback for that 84 Rams team is a 0. So if I plow the ball up the field and I call that inside run, I know that my chance of fumbling it is greatly reduced, but I won't get Eric Dickerson's +3 unless I hit that rare halfback. Now, I want that first down. I'm facing the Bears that are -2. Well, if I go outside, I know Dickerson gets 1. If I just get halfback for the most part, I'm going to get that 1 yard. I'll get the first down here late in the 4th quarter. Or I throw caution to the wind. Do I gamble and take a progression pass here, right? Well, if I do, I could be sacked, intercept. So that was the fun of the game. And an only thing so here's the thing about my game. I have this solitaire thing. I have this two-player thing. Every single time I sat down to play with my buddies, with my brother, my game, we never used the head-to-head. We always played the solitaire version because it was so cool to sit back and I'm in control of the huddle. I'm in control of the cards, and I just have to. My hands are off on the other side. I'm like, okay, I hope my guys can get it done. And I'd watch as my brother would orchestrate a drive down the field, or Glenn would orchestrate a drive down the field with Barry Sanders. Glenn is a huge Detroit fan, so he always had those Barry Sanders teams. And he was trying to orchestrate drives down the field with Barry Sanders and that kind of thing. So you're kind of hopeless on defense. You sit back and go, okay, well, I hope he fumbles the ball away, or he's gonna. And so it was fun, and it's fast, and you can play it with anybody. You could teach it to anybody. Is it Statis Pro football? No. Is it APBA? No. Is it Stratomatic? No. Those are totally different. There's a level of design intent with those games. It's wholly different than the design intent of my game, right? And the design intent with those games, and this is how I can't speak enough about APBA yet because I haven't played a lot head to head, certainly. But the design intent for me with Stratomatic when I saw it, and again, Hal's always been about getting statistics right with his 2x6, right? Baseball. I mean, clearly Hal Richmond was dedicated to making it statistically accurate. But to me, Stratomatic is a strategy game, right? It's a strategy game. I'm going to set up my line. I'm going to move guys into zone 2. I'm going to drop guys into zone 3. And you're going to try to take advantage of that with a flat pass to the halfback. If I vacated a zone, there's a chess match happening in Stratomatic that I think is beyond the statistical accuracy, right? When you play it, all right. So solo, no big deal. Solo's elementary. You call a play, you roll the dice, you check a team defensive card. It's going to be pretty accurate.
Right.
Statis Pro football. I mean, I probably played more of that as a kid growing up than anything. Statis Pro to me. Was, again, you had a little chess match going, but it was designed in such a way that I could glance down and see Marcus Allen, see my offensive line, look at his defense, and pretty much know that I could abuse Marcus Allen, right? I could run Marcus Allen until the cows came home, right? He's a 0 stamina. He's got a 100 breakaway. I've got +3s across my line. They're going to have to key him, and they're going to have to key him, and they're going to have to key him well, and so. But I always felt Statis Pro football was less chess match, despite its shifting of players. It was less chess match than, say, Stratomatic, in my experience. APBA, again, I can't speak head to head because I've only played a head maybe 3 times. What blew my mind when I got APBA back, this first 2 weeks ago when I got it in the mail,
right?
I had not realized with the first time I played it that I literally had every single player rated to do run, pass, kick, everybody. Therefore, I could set, as if I was in a league, I could set up my kicking team, my kick return team, my punt return team, my place kicking team, my field goal kicking team, my offensive team, my 3 wide receiver set team, my 3 back team, my nickel D, by just setting my lineups. Brilliant.
That's some people like all the cards, some people are like,
sure,
because there is a generic sense to a lot of those the
Numbers.
linemen. Yeah, I mean,
sure.
They don't have a stat, they didn't catch a pass, didn't do a fumble recovery,
right.
So stuff like that. I mean, but it's interesting. I'm glad that you ran through all the games like that, and their engines, their kind of mechanics.
Right.
I wonder if, as you do that, do you try to incorporate any of those games, or you
mean as I designed?
Yeah. And is your game customizable, or do you?
Oh, you could, anything I make hoping people will tweak it to suit them, right? I try to make them break proof where you can't really break it, right? But I design all my games. I have an intent. So I never design a game to copy another game or to mimic another game. My rule 1 is it has to feel like the sport or the thing I'm creating. It has to be accessible, and it has to be teachable pretty easily. I'm trying to make more games that require dice than cards, because dice are accessible and dice last forever. Fast action cards, I used to love them because all that information was in one card flip, man. That's why I made my game a fast action. It's like, man, I got everything right here. I don't need none of that other stuff. Now it's like, dude, I don't want to shuffle cards, man. I don't want to mess around with cutting new ones every time these get old and ragged. When we were kids, Statis Pro football, I mean, in Status Pro football, you know, we used to eat Tombstone pizza while we were playing, right? And you get a tomato stain thumbprint on a card, and then guys would go, "Damn it! Now we know what that card is." And so you found yourself in a way over the course of a summer, those cards would get ruined, right, with stains and things, and that just doesn't happen with dice.
No, exactly. No, they can get lost. They can fly across the room, but
Sure.
easier
You can swallow them. You know, if you're not
I-
careful, you might choke on one. Right?
Oh man, dice. The dangers of dice. There needs to be a PSA on this. And you said that your Desert Island football games are Second Season Express and GridZone Turf Wars.
Yeah. I have never, and I made a video talking for an hour on GridZone. I made a video talking about genre-defining games that define the hobby for a person. I don't mean define it for everybody. I mean define it for me. For me, the first thing I ever learned from my brother was bowl bound. And then I transitioned, because I love pro football, I transitioned to Paydirt pretty quick. And then we discovered at 12 Statis Pro. That was a game-defining, hobby-defining game for me. Title Bout was a hobby-defining game for me. And that's generally whatever you first fall in love with. You know, you ask Stratomatic guys, no matter what they're doing today, they're going to tell you that was the game that brought them to the hobby. And you can't knock people for their favorite games. You just can't do it. I think it's brilliant. For me, it is a matter of at this stage, I'm 51, and I like to be able to complete as much as I can. So, for instance, I love APBA. I've only been able to finish 2 games. I'm in the middle of my 3rd game. It takes me a little time to do it. I'll get faster. It takes me time to do it. In the same amount of time, I can play my game, Flash Football. I finished an entire playoff series in one afternoon, right? GridZone, I can play a full game in 20 minutes. And Second Season Express, I can play a full game now in about 17 minutes. So speed is big. I don't want to sacrifice details. I don't want to sacrifice the sense that I'm playing the sport. So that's why those are Desert Island games for me, is because they give me speed, accuracy, details, and simplicity, right? Mm-hmm. Does that mean they're the best? Oh, and I would never declare the best for other people. Everybody has their best. Does that mean they're even if I had nothing but time and I had buddies to play with, would it be APBA? Would it be Statis Pro? Would it be Stratomatic? I don't know. It would be the best fit to play with other human beings, maybe. I mean, I play exclusively now solitaire, mm-hmm. right? Where I live now, I don't have any friends that would play tabletop sports games, right? And, I kind of like that, right? That's why I invented my game originally as a solitaire game, because I played a lot of solitaire stuff. Mm-hmm. GridZone, I can't decide. It's funny because people wrinkle their nose. Number one, it's a fictional sport. They wrinkle their nose. It's fictional. I wrinkle their nose. But the experience, I have never had anything like it. And I'm referring to not the sport. Yeah, okay, you'll get used to whatever the sport is. It's not that it's fictional, because normally I can't tolerate fictional stuff because it's not couched in anything I can recognize. So I have nothing invested in speedball. What the hell's speedball, right? I have nothing invested in speedball, right? So this looks like football. It feels like arena football on a 100-yard field. The scoring is different, but because I know it's football, I can see it in my mind's eye. I know what's happening. I instantly recognized it. So it's not really that fictional, especially when there's 7-man football being played out there in the world today, right? So we know it exists. It's this combination of the speed in which we get the results from the charts, the linear dice, the effect of the rating matchups, and what it produces narratively through that process. And then we take it to the next level through a career mode where we watch players go up and down. They actually get old. They actually get better. They actually get worse. They leave your team as a free agent. You have no control over it. There is a certain experience I'm having with GridZone. And I remember I actually run a 12 human being owned league. We're in our 16th season. I run that through a Facebook group, and those PFL games are actually people's teams. I'm the commissioner. I play those games. And GridZone is utterly solitary. You make no calls, 0 calls. You roll the dice tell you that that team has thrown the ball versus a blitz, and I roll and check the charts for the guys. They set up what's called a PCM, which is their playbook, and that's locked for the season. And I just roll the dice. And so if my brother, for instance, has a great quarterback, so he has more passes on that chart. So I roll a D6, it's a pass versus, and here's the brilliant thing about GridZone's solitaire play call system. That team's offensive play call dictates their opponent's defensive call against them.
Interesting.
So what that means, and this again, to me is sophisticated. Why is this sophisticated? It's super simple. It's the most elegant solo play call system I've ever seen. Why is it? Because it's super simple. And because we all know what happens in football when it's 3rd and 2 against John Riggins. Everybody in the world knows John Riggins is getting the ball, right? The way that's set up, it assumes the defensive isn't stupid. They're going to call an appropriate amount of plays to stop the appropriate amount of passes. Right. So my brother says, I want to throw the ball 5 times. And I say, that's awesome, but you're going to run into the defense 5 times. So he can't get away from creating his own defensive monster. So I want to abuse the pass, but you're going to get caught in pass defenses. So it keeps you from cheating the system. It's genius.
That's interesting. You know, they've a lot of the solitaire development with APBA is assuming that you're calling offense. You want to call, you know, I'm a Steeler fan, so Franco Harris, Rocky Blyer, up the gut or whatever, and you're going to roll to allocate your defense. In the old days, they, you know, 1 or 2 was a roll was for the light line, 2 or 3 or 4 the medium, 4, 5 or 6 the heavy line. Now they've got, for years there was something called the Fletch 67 defense, which let you weight the points and you know, determine. But really, you know, in APBA terms, really quickly is just, you know, if you've got a 31 to 34 point defense, you know, you've already baked in their inability. It's not as though they don't know what to do in a run or a pass. It's just they're not capable of executing.
That's it.
But, you know, that it feels like the GridZone turf war seems like they've kind of built that in. It's like, you know what the defense is going to do, but can it really be effective?
Yeah, and then GridZone uses a linear die. So here's the thing: I have a great so it calls up matchups. So I have the highest rated left tackle in the game. I roll pass versus pass. I go to that chart. I roll the D12. The D12, if it's a high number, offense is going to probably get something. If it's a low number, the defense is going to probably do something. If it's in the middle, it's kind of a crapshoot. But let's say I have a +3 tackle and I roll a 5, and it says, is my left tackle greater than that their right end? If it is, then it says a 10-yard pass, or it might say 50-yard pass, right? My left tackle has just buried that end, and my quarterback's been able to complete a bomb, right? So I start to visually see the X's and O's of the game unfold, and it's a linear die roll. So you can have a brilliant team and roll a lot of, I'm rolling a lot of bad rolls, and guys watching at home are pulling their hair out going, damn it, Jay, quit rolling 2s, man. You know, because my team should be whooping these guys, right? So there is this fun to the fact that we have no control over it. They draft their teams, they set their lineups, they set their play calls, and then I play every game for them. And then at the end of the season, they're going to go through off-season charts they can't control. Then we have a draft where they can draft to fill holes or to fix holes. Then they set their new playbook and we do it again, and they're locked. So if they have an injury at quarterback, they're stuck. That quarterback is replaced by a 0 backup, and he's stuck there the rest of the year if they lose a guy for the season. So it's a really interesting dynamic for league play. When it comes to football, as I told my wife, and I told this to Gary, you know, again, Gary, this will be no surprise to Gary, as Gary's in the league with me, and we just did a draft. And I looked at Gary and I said, you know, I'm going to tell you, Gary, I think you have invented, for me personally, one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life and played in my life and experienced in my life. But damn it, why didn't you make it real football? And he's like, because I didn't want it to be real football. You can't argue with that, right? Why did I make flash football without quarterbacks? Because I wanted you to be the quarterback. So design intent is the key. Now, if it comes down to what I would do if I retired today and I had nothing but time, I would probably sit down to bang out every snap of every game of every moment of the 1958 season, right? And I would choose APBA to make that argument. APBA for me would be the perfect device for that event for me. Interesting. And here's the thing: I love how APBA rates their defense. I love how it changes the variable opportunity of yardage based on field position, because because statistically in history, it's a fact. It's a fact that where you're at on the field affects averages, because defenses change how their attitudes, whether we talk about it or not, it's true. Whether offenses throw the ball more from the 5 or they throw the ball more from the 30. We all know most teams aren't about to do something stupid throwing the ball from their own 5. Now, that was in the day. Now, nowadays, you don't know what teams are going to do, right?
Right.
Tom Brady may throw the ball 62 times no matter where he's at, right? So it's hard to argue that play call, situational play calling is utterly different than it was, when football really originated. When APBA was invented, for instance, what did APBA Football come out? 58?
58, right?
58. So what did the designer of APBA Football have for him to base it on? Only the 30s, the 40s, and the up to 58 to design his football game, right? When I sit down to design a football game today, I'm a head scratching. Well, am I designing this new modern Drew Brees gets 5,000 yards passing, ain't even trying? Am I designing the running back might touch the ball 10 times a game now? Am I designing, well, my top back only allowed to touch the ball 10 times because he might get hurt? Or is this Franco Harris getting 360 carries? I'm now looking at eras of football. I can't create one pro football game now, right? And I just saw one of our community guys, I won't say who, just do a rant on APBA.
We all know.
Yeah. And I cracked up because, I don't want to get into it, but I cracked up because it's like you're taking out of context how the game was designed. We could redesign APBA, but then we lose traditional classic APBA, in my opinion. I don't want to see APBA. I wouldn't want to see it totally redesigned to fit modern football. And my argument to some of the things in that video was he was something about it's not designed for me to have 5 wide receivers set. Yeah, you can put receivers in all of the skilled positions boxes, right?
Yeah. Well, and just to be clear too, for those who may not, this is we focus on APBA Football, but for those who, they came out in 1983 with the 1982 season. They came out with the full base football master game. So let you do the 3 wides and the 2 tights and the nickel dime. It came out a few years after the baseball master game, and they've still tweaked the charts a bit. Expanded kick results. Now, do you put 4 or 5 wides in? Yeah, you can do that. And as Greg Barrett points out, the great solo replayer, that becomes that's your pro set. If your pro base offense is a 3 wide, then that's what you got, or a 2 tights or whatever. I don't know. They're not really doing 2 tights now as much, are they?
Nope.
No, I mean that we've evolved yet again. Not only that, but now you've got the CFL and the XFL and the USFL coming back next year.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, there's a whole another world of,
and that's not counting college, which is 99% spread offenses now, unless we're talking about little schools, Division II schools. Listen, spread offenses for the most part that's all that's happening in college football. Yeah.
Is it more geared to just shoving offense down your throat? I prefer a 6-3 game.
Yeah. Brother. That's what I said. I mean, we can't change where we come from. We can't change that we're old guys, right? I have my aesthetic, and I not only have a visual aesthetic, but I have a particular football aesthetic, right? And so I do prefer 1978 or back when it comes to X's and O's, when it comes to philosophies. The birth of the so-called West Coast offense existed with Sid Gilliam prior to the Bill Walsh making it famous. And, Bill Walsh might have taken it to another level at Cincinnati. And then when he went to San Fran, he won some Super Bowls. That instantly puts it on the map. And those aren't bad offenses. Those were brilliant offenses. And they created the zone blitz because of it. And it wiped quarterbacks out. I mean, there was a period, 88, they had the 16 starting quarterbacks knocked out, or 18 quarterbacks knocked out in that season, because teams said they're dropping 3 steps. So the beautiful thing about football is we go, okay, you're going to invent a 3-step drop, then we're going to zone blitz you and we're going to kill your quarterback. Well, they did. And then the NFL said, we got to fix this, So defensive coaches aren't going to sit back and let you kill them. They're going to do something about it. And that's the beautiful thing about the evolution of the sport, right? The problem is, and there's no problem, football today is what football's evolved into. There's no problem with that.
Right.
Board games, though, depending on where you get them, if you take my Flash Football and you pull up the 1950s teams and you pull up the modern teams, you're going to see nothing but plus pass defenses.
Right.
So when I made the 2020 charts for the guys in the Facebook group and I gave it away, I said, here they are. Remember, guys, this is based on my formulas for my game. Every pass defense is +2. There is no pass defense in 2020 in my game, right? They're going to get +2 to everything. And if somebody says, that's crazy. Oh, is it? Is it really? How many quarterbacks threw for 4,500 yards? How accurate is my game? It's pretty freaking accurate.
Yeah.
But is there any dynamic to that? Nope. There's no subtle nuance to it. But let's talk about the subtle nuance. In my opinion, the subtle nuance of, let's say, the 91 Eagles. Was it 90? Is it the 90 Eagles and the 90 Cowboys, right? The subtle nuances of those two teams, right?
Right.
Pretty epic.
Well,
Right? Pretty epic, right? So they're subtle, but it's epic in the subtlety. Well, nowadays, again, if you don't throw for 4,000 yards, you're pretty pedestrian. If you run for 1,500, wow, whew, you're amazing.
Well, that's it. They did start to come back a bit with the twin backs, or the big, the beast mode Marshawn Lynch kind of a thing. I mean, if you go back talking about 78, I mean, back in the era of being sentient about sports, I mean, the Cowboys were like the outer space, with the shifts and the shotgun, but I mean, personally, we missed the 50 Rams, the Tom, the Fears and Hirsch kind of a thing, or Sammy Baugh. I mean,
I was talking to Gary Brown when I helped him play test his 1980s GridZone set. So he made the 1980 NFL for GridZone. What if these teams were in GridZone? And so I loved the idea and I helped him. But I explained to him, I pulled out one of my stat books that shows the statistics based on day, year, or decade. There were more touchdowns thrown in the 50s than there were in any decade up to the 90s, late 90s. Yeah. They were throwing more touchdown passes in the NFL in the 50s. People have no idea, right? Yeah. They assume 50s was crippled. Now, it was far from crippled. Now, they threw interceptions, but they were far from crippled when they passed the ball. Yeah. And the Rams, my God, the 1960s Chargers and the Rams were remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the whole NFL.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing. Yeah. Lenny Moore in 1958 averaged 7.3 yards per carry.
Yeah, so the offense was happening. I mean, you tend to emphasize the 10 greatest hits and all that kind of thing, and that roving maniacal middle linebacker and all that. I got to mention the book Games That Changed the Game. I'm sure you've read that one. Yeah. I mean, like 100 times over. Jaworski did such a brilliant job talking about the eras of the game. For anyone that hasn't read that, that's a must have on your shelf.
Absolutely. And by no means my conversation about my favorite aesthetic of football, because it's an aesthetic from the past, is not a declaration of how bad football is today. It's not. Football's different, and it's not different in a bad way. It's different in a different way, right? And so when I take APBA and I look at it, and remember, I got the basic set. I didn't want the master set because I'm going to be playing solo. I don't need all that. I can substitute things like that. So I have the basic edition. I honestly am using defense. I'm literally, I was rolling the random thing and I said, this is ridiculous. They have ratings for their defense. So for instance, the Packers are like a 31 defensive team. They're already accounting for how bad the Packers were. So I'm literally just saying, well, listen, this is 3rd and 1. The Packers aren't going to ever be in anything other than a ground defense. So I put them in the ground defense. I'm not going to make any bones about that. And the Packers, if they're facing Johnny U and company, they got to find a way to stop Amiche and Lenny Moore on an inside run with a 31D. And I think it works beautifully, So I'm calling offenses and I just put them in the right D, and their ratings still impact much of that quality of that index, that index score.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to be curious as you maybe proceed with APBA. I know we're so centric here, but if you in terms of the what ifs, playing the 58 Colts versus even if you want to play them against the 70 Colts or something like that, and then and to that point, I guess, as you maybe depending on how far you go with that, but I'm curious because you are, you're an athlete, you own a fitness business, and I'm curious about athletics, talking about eras, talking about the human body, not only the evolution of the game mentally, also in terms of competition for building fan base. I mean, obviously it's showy. People, you know, those guys used to be selling cars in the off season. Now these kids are from pee-wee until, you know, the end of their career. They are groomed, the nutrition, the medicine, the regime, everything is so different. But I wonder physically, how different, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, you know, I was talking to Howie Mooney about Canadian Football League. It's a bigger field. So you've got guys maybe a little lighter. As I recall in the 60s, 70s, you had Purple People Eaters, Fearsome Foursome Steelers even. They kept these linemen a bit more trim to get them mobile, right? They started dropping. Bud Carson had a very light middle linebacker. Lambert starts dropping him 20 yards back in coverage. Then you've got the 3-4 coming back, even though the AFL had the 3-4. So you've got your more mobile backers and those beef guys way up front and the hogs on the O-line. Now, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong again, I think, you know, some of that era, if you had added, say, 40 pounds to these guys in the 60s, you know.
So there's a book called The Physics of Football, written by scientists in, I think it's Nebraska. If you want to know the truth about Dick Butkus versus Ray Lewis, read that book.
Right.
Dick Butkus, according to their formulas, studying film, how fast he moves, how far he goes, and where he hits guys, and they're using math formulas on film based on height, weight, et cetera. Dick Butkus still has the hardest hit in the history of the game, according to the film they have. Okay. Ray Lewis, pretty remarkable, man, was one of the fastest I would say big middle linebackers in history. But listen, what's really changed, in my opinion, as far as athletes, so number one, people say we're bigger, faster, stronger. Yes, that a lot of that's nutrition. A lot of that is dedication to these guys are now paid enough that they can exercise year round, period. Right. So they are professional athletes, which means they've got to be treating themselves like professionals year round. So training is the big part, right? Health. You know, when you're Joe Namath and you blow your knee out right before the draft and you're getting surgery before the New York Jets gamble $250,000 on you, and the scar tissue alone changes Joe Namath's mobility. Now, scar tissue with physical therapy and training is not even remotely an issue for repairing ACLs. It's rehab, infection, and then getting that scar tissue. So we didn't know, you know, scar tissue, we now know how to eradicate. We actually know how to just get rid of scar tissue. Joe Namath was crippled from scar tissue, right? So things have just come a long way in every possible way. But I would argue this, Bob Lilly, in my opinion, dominant. Bob Lilly today would dominate in pro football. Absolutely dominate. These guys weren't, this is the funny thing about watching old film. And I always tell people, you can't look at statistics because statistics don't tell you anything. You need to look at game film. If you want to know what Johnny Unitas looked like, watch the film. Watch it in not slow-mo, watch it in real time. Watch how quickly he dropped, set, fired. And tell me how different he looks from guys today, right? Tell me when he threw that slant, whether it looked a lot different than Joe Montana. No. I mean, these guys were very much the same quality professional athletes.
Right. I mean,
what's changed is X's and O's. And I think guys are bigger. If you want a big 435-pound athlete now, you can get one. Back then, good luck finding a 435-pound athlete. Right?
Sure.
But most linebackers will still function at the 220 to 240 range in the NFL. Back then, they were going to function between 215 and maybe 235. We're talking 15 pounds. You know, we're talking inches. Most the average height of the American population, I don't think's changed much over 50 years. You might argue weights changed a little bit, muscle mass, but again, these guys train you around. Right. What I noticed, so when I first time I coached 12-year-old kids, 8th grade football. My buddy says, Jason, I'm a head coach. I want you to come out and help me with the defense. I said, okay, do I get control of the defense? He says, absolutely. I came out to 12. These were 12-year-old kids. You know what I taught these kids? 2 things were my priority. 3 technically, but 2. I wanted them to tackle. Fundamentals. We're going to tackle. We're going to make sure our head is up so we don't break our neck. We're going to teach them to make sure you tackle right. I taught them one simple thing, and we literally went undefeated and shut out every single opponent. A fumbled return in the championship game gave a team 6 points against. It was the only thing we gave up the whole year. I taught them pursuit angles. I taught 12-year-old children how to pursue the ball. So they weren't outrun. They wouldn't take the wrong angle and be outrun by another kid every single time, right? And we destroyed people. Pursuit angles changed football. When you watch on Sunday, watch college teams, good coaches, when you see the big play and you see the breakaway, I promise you, if it isn't a missed tackle, it's bad pursuit angles. And I think we see less bad pursuit angles today than we did in the broken field 50s.
Sure. Yeah, because I mean, they had game film where they were starting that Paul Brown, right, and whatnot. But I mean, it's kind of like that movie in baseball. I should know it, but where they're really going about the deep numbers, averages, or now with golf swings and isometrics or whatever. I mean, biometrics. I mean, but the physics, it's like billiards. The physics, the linear, the relation of lines.
The geometric angles never change. Physics never changes. And when you read that book about Brady, it breaks down Brady's IQ, the intangibles. So it talks about, we talk about intangibles all the time. What are intangibles? Well, they're intangibles. His IQ, his ability geometrically to throw the perfect pass at the perfect trajectory in a blink of an eye is measurable. You can measure it. That makes Tom Brady special, whether we like him or not. You can measure it by looking at the game film, right? So they measured it with actual science. A SAP, there's a great thing. So this is what's remarkable about the book. They talk about, so when you take the average man, this was written in I think 2000, it was published in 2000. I think it was probably written between, I don't know how long it took them to write the book, but they talked about the trenches. So in that 2 yards in which they fire off and hit each other, they hit each other with a quarter ton worth, a full ton worth of hitting every single snap. It's a car wreck every single snap for those guys when it's drive blocking, right? So why are we also seeing the pass more? Because it's better to stand up and backpedal and defend with your hands than to get lit up every time. Because the great center of the Steelers suffered, unfortunately, brain damage from all the years of cracking noggins, right? The brilliant center for the Steelers. And so I think part of the reason we see passing more, it's a little safer in the long run.
What's your take on the helmets and helmet or no helmet and the whole, how to fix concussions?
I told my buddy in 96, they should take pads off these guys. We should play football like rugby. Ruggers have concussions. Ruggers wear some helmets to protect the ears and head. But if you want to put an end to this stuff, you got to remove the pads. You got to minimize the pads. I don't think you can protect the brain. I mean, I've had multiple concussions. I've had 46 stitches into my skull I've had multiple concussions. I've lost a day of memory. I had a concussion I suffered for a year, a post-concussion syndrome with blood on my brain for a year. I absolutely know. And they were all flag football. They were all these came to me in flag football.
Wow.
From bad collisions that were accidents. They weren't purposeful. My brain was bashing against my skull. No matter how you dissect the helmet, your brain crashes against your skull. So unless they find a way to keep your brain from moving, good luck.
Interesting. Moving on, speaking of the wonderful world of violent contact sports that voyeurs get to kind of enjoy while these poor guys are trying to earn a living here.
Right.
Talking about boxing, I remember one of your videos. You've got Glory Days boxing. I think in your stack you also had the Legends of Boxing, and of course we talked Titled Bout. In terms of translating a real physical thing into board games, how do those boxing games do? How do they perform, and how do they do it, and who does it best?
I think the biggest challenge for boxing, and I say this because I've invented my own, is rating boxers. You only have a handful of statistics to rate boxers: wins, losses, draws, knockouts.
No.
Right? That's it. It's where are your statistics to rate boxers, right?
Well, outside of physical reach and
height, weight, reach, weight class, correct. But boy, how do you rate the power? Well, you base that on a percentage of knockdowns in their career versus wins, or right? So that's already, that of itself is a miracle to me, how brilliant these two guys, Gary Brown and Anthony, have rated these boxers. It's pretty remarkable. The visceral portion for me, what makes it physical and visceral is the blow-by-blow, toe-to-toe exchanges, right? So the Alzat game, Return of the Champ, does this remarkably well. Not Return of the Champ, Championship Boxing, which is an import from Alzat, which is Lamborn Games. And so I've imported that. I've had that for years. Again, amazing. It uses a fast action deck, no dice really. But again, it's that toe-to-toe physical exchange. So we have that combative moment that makes it very visceral, very physical. Glory Days Boxing does this pretty good. Title Bout, I think, does this very well. Legends of Boxing is a little more abstract. Gary tends to make his games a little faster and a little more abstract. So Legends of Boxing doesn't quite, to me, have the same sense that we're watching two guys right here, right now. It seems to be more truncated action in short bursts, if that makes sense.
Sure.
That's a design intent. Gary didn't do it wrong. That's how he wanted his game, right? So it works. For me, for it to be physical, and I've talked about this before, Second Season Express is an abstract football game because we don't know down, right? We don't know distance. We only call a play and we roll the dice to see if we get to keep playing, right? It's not football. Ironically, that's not football. Football is down a distance. Football is field position, right? So my two favorite football games right now don't do that. GridZone doesn't do that. Neither does Second Season Express. It took me a long time to say, I'm not playing football here, right? I have to visualize it. But when I play APBA, boy, I get down and distance. I get time on the clock. I get where we're at on the field. So that's visceral, right? We're in it, man. We're in the trenches. I see Johnny at the line of scrimmage. It's 3rd and 1. I got Amiche in the backfield. It's fourth quarter. There's 17, there's 7 minutes, 15 seconds left to play in the game. And I know I'm between those 30s. I got a certain advantage, yardage wise, etc. Boxing is no different, right? When it is this sense of I think tactics is a big part of it. If you're going to play a head-to-head game, am I inside? Am I outside? Am I covering up? Am I going for a knockdown? Am I trying to stay alive? Are those tactics exist? Those tactics exist in Alzat's game, Championship Boxing. Very, very much. It's punch by punch, blow by blow, pretty intense. Wow. Title Bout a little abstracted. Glory Days a little more abstracted, and Legends of Boxing's even more abstracted. Yet they still have 9 or so segments of 3 minutes. They still have those minutes broken into multiple segments in a round, right? So for me, the physicality has to be the sense that I'm throwing punches, I'm blocking punches, right? But most of those things are going to slow the game down, and your average game player, your average guy is going to say, I'll sacrifice some of those details for speed. And that's what Second Season Express does, right? And I'm going to be honest. Keith's game, I've said this before, I found it. I was mesmerized by the ratings, mesmerized by the depth and the quality. I had no tolerance to play the game any period of time because it was so much, for me, it was a lot of work to find out I ran for 2 yards or for an incomplete pass. And I've seen guys complain about APBA. That's a lot of chart looking up and forgetting it. But it's not near what Second Season is. I mean, Second Season, I've got 40 pages I'm flipping through, right?
Really?
Second Season is a notebook of charts, right?
I've got so I got up early. I was looking for that. I do have it.
Yeah.
And he actually has it. I think you had mentioned he's got the video review, and it's kind of weighted toward the call stands. I think 6166 is overturned. He does have in the latest version, the latest 8 years ago probably is he's got the regional and seasonal weather charts in there.
Oh, he does.
He does. Yeah.
I have that, and I didn't even notice it. Well, that shows you how much I play Second Season.
Well, it is not your mind. And he's got rare plays for each of the types of offensive calls. So when APBA came out with its, red ink chart in '83, it's like, it's an impressive number of options, but it's maybe a little. Yeah. You find out over time when you test your game. How did you test your games? First of all, I guess, how many games have you designed? What is your current roster, and what kind of testing do you put in?
Oh, well, God, I think I'm at I just released Racing Time. I don't know. I think I'm at 15 games that
The
I've
time series.
manufactured, published, and given to people. So I start first with knowledge of the sport, and then if I don't have a great knowledge of the sport, and I've fully admitted, like baseball and hockey are two things I don't have. I don't have. When it comes to football, I consider myself an amateur historian, and I consider myself a coach, a knowledgeable coach, ultimately, because you don't read 40 books on coaching football from 1938 to the modern era and not know quite a bit about football. But in that sense, football is easy for me. Football's easy for me. And then I start then with statistical understanding of the sport statistically. Then I sit down to say, what do I want to make that I want to play? Do I want to use dice? What kind of dice? How many dice? Do I want to have a curve? Do I want to use a curve? Do I want to use linear dice? Do I want to use cards? If I do, how many cards are going to constitute seconds? And if I'm going to do seconds like hockey, what is a card worth in my hockey game? 8 seconds, 10 seconds, 2 minutes? Because I can truncate hockey into 1 minute per card and make a 20-minute deck of a hockey game. Plays in 20 cards, right? Per quarter, and I'm done with that hockey game, and we're finished with a full hockey game in 15 minutes, right? So if I do that, and I understand the probability of what can occur in hockey in 1 minute, I have to then set the probabilities of how many fights could occur in that 1 minute card, right? How many shots on goal could occur in that 1 minute card? How many, right? So then I have to break down the probabilities of what exists in a card flip. Right. Then I have to recognize, okay, I got that right. But the minute I pull a card out of the deck, I've just changed the probabilities, right? So the probabilities with a fast action deck actually change with every time you throw a card away, right? Every time you discard, you change the probabilities. So you need to understand that. So my Flash football game, I used to tell people this, it'll give you all the averages that you would expect from a pro football game when you look at the stats. But the game isn't based on averages. It's based on probabilities of the events of a certain amount of yardage occurring. And then the probabilities of a certain number of positions touching the ball, right? So that's how I design Flash football. So when you play a season out, you're going to see the averages and things come out, right? Okay. So when I design, let's say, and then I like racing, for instance, I'm not going to try to quantify lap times. I don't care. There are guys out there that have made games that do quantify lap times. They do a great job quantifying laps. That's, I just want to quantify the excitement and the ebb and the flow of a great race from the open wheel 1960s Grand Prix, right? That's my thing. Basketball, we have data. Boy, we have great statistical data on basketball. Every 48 minutes, we have data for 48 minutes. I can create a basketball game with percentile dice that would be perfectly accurate, just rolling percentile dice, right? So if we understand the percentiles, we can simulate any sport with dice. Now I got to decide, well, how much do I want players to impact that? Then I have to have strategy. How does the strategy impact that? What's fun? Is it fun to just roll dice and say goal? Or do I want to roll dice to watch the puck move around the ice? So I decide, my fast games, my time games, they're meant to truncate the game into very fast 5-minute games. So we sacrifice tons of detail for scores or for shots on goal or for total points, or like the racing game for moving cards up and down the grid in a car racing game. Very simple. So I'm not trying to create simulators. I'm trying to create tabletop games that are palatable, fun, simple to teach, but also that are that feel like the sport, are the sport we want to imagine in our mind, right? I've said it before. I had a friend argue with me about John Madden not being a simulator. You don't want a football simulator. You do not want a football video game simulator. You'd be bored out of your skull. Most people don't have a clue what goes into football on a snap-by-snap basis. They would be overwhelmed with what they do not know. Right? Yeah. They know what they watch on TV and what the commentators have told them. They know certain things about statistical, they have opinions. We all have opinions, but they would be absolutely destroyed by the boredom of a football simulator.
It's funny. I back when I started in 1979, I never played an organized sport. I mean, but I got a fairly well-written book, I thought, on how to play football, and it's pretty dry stuff. And I remember, if you remember the America's Game series, all the Super Bowl winners.
Yes, sir.
Madden talked about going to see a seminar by Vince Lombardi, and he thought this is going to be amazing, all the knowledge. And he said Vince talked about the sweep for 4 hours. They took a
Yeah.
lunch break and then came back and talked about the sweep. I mean, just
That's
that one, you
Yeah.
know.
That's it. And that's, when people talk about Belichick, and the consistency Belichick's had, in my opinion, and my brother and I used to always have these wonderful conversations. We still do. Who is the best adjusting? Who is the best coach in history at adjusting at halftime? Who's the best coach at getting the best out of their talent? Who's the best coach at clock management? We love to have these conversations, right? My brother and I. Who's the best coach at acquiring talent or value? All these great things. To me, Belichick was the first coach that taught situational awareness to defensive players, and he drilled it into these guys. So his lowly third string nose tackle better know what the hell to do on 3rd and 3 in this situation against this team. And I think that doesn't mean other coaches did not do it, but it's clear that we've seen situational IQ in Belichick's teams are compared to let's put it this way. In Belichick's era, his players have a situational IQ that we're not seeing from other coaches. But that certainly may not be true if it was Chuck Noll, may not be true if it was, right? I mean, Chuck Noll may have had situational, right? We're talking about this era.
Well, yeah.
Right. I think it's kind of like watching Sean, what's his name? What's the young kid that was coaching the Rams or is coaching the Rams?
Oh, darn. I know.
LaFleur is another fine example. These guys are great young head coaches in the NFL. They're brilliant at certain things, but they lack a certain perspective on what came before that would be an answer to the dilemma they're having right now. For instance, when I watched the Tampa Bay Buccaneers destroy Kansas City in the Super Bowl with pressure, yes, we can make excuses. Oh, he's got a bad toe. Oh, this, oh, that. At no point did Andy Reid adjust and keep in a second back or a second tight end to help protect his young quarterback. Mm-hmm. So those are skills that Don Shula would have made that change in 2 sweet seconds. Joe Gibbs would have made that change in 2 sweet seconds.
Yeah.
Right. They would have said, oh, we're keeping in that. So we're going to bring in a second tight end and give this kid help. We're going to keep Kelsey in. We're going to sacrifice Kelsey's. Think about it. How many passes did Kelsey catch that were irrelevant in that game?
Yeah.
Every one of them.
Right.
Every one of them were 4-yard passes. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
For what it led to him being chased and harassed into bad passes most of the game. So what if you sacrificed Kelsey as a pass catcher and kept him in? What then? We'll never know because Andy Reid would not use traditional X's and O's.
Well, now, and it's also, I mean, you've got this committee. I mean, we've certainly gone past the era of, the Bear Bryant. You've always had assistant coaches, but in the past 20 years, it's gone beyond off the charts. I wonder how that affects. You've got all that information there and you're flipping through actual overhead game footage, but if you're not, how are more people not making better adjustments more often?
Right. Well, they're making adjustments based on what the opponent is giving them. Right. So, it's funny. Every coach is different. Some coaches say, listen, this is what we do best. We're going to have to win this way or we don't win. They're going to have to stop us at what we do best or we're not going to do it. Belichick always says, what do they do best? We're going to take it away. He finds a way every week to say, I don't care if they beat us running. They will not beat us with Tom Brady. With Peyton Manning. They'll beat us running, but they will not beat us with Peyton Manning. And he achieves it. And he's won how many titles because of it? Yeah. Now, granted, he's had help. My brother and I always talked about this. Name the best quarterback coach combinations in history that were able to win Super Bowls without each other. It's rare. Brady just proved he could win without Belichick. Peyton Manning proved he could win without the Colts, right? But it's rare that Chuck Noll ever won before Bradshaw or after Bradshaw. Right. Bradshaw never won before Noll or after Noll. Right. Montana never won without Bill Walsh. So it's remarkable how these things go hand in hand. Coaches cannot necessarily be successful. It's a handful, right? There's a handful of coaches who did. Weeb Ewbank, won with Johnny Unitas and he won with Broadway Joe, right? Weeb Ewbank's one of the few guys and he also won 2 of the biggest upsets in history, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not upsets. The 58 game was not an upset, but it was a great game. And then of course the upset game. So there's a handful of these coaches that I think defy, for instance, LaFleur. I'll talk about LaFleur last year in the Green Bay game. So it's 4th and 3. I think they're at the 12-yard lines, 4th and 3. There's 2 minutes to play. and he decides to kick the field goal. Okay, against the team with Tom Brady, down by 7. He's going to kick a field goal, right?
Mhm.
So his thinking is, we're going to somehow stop Tom Brady in the next 2 minutes. We're going to get the ball back, probably at around the 50 to the 55. And somehow Aaron Rodgers is going to make up 50-something yards and a touchdown to win the game.
Mhm.
So he took the ball on 4th and 3 at the 12 out of the hands of the best quarterback in football, right? Bad idea.
Yeah.
Bad idea. It cost him, in my opinion, cost him.
Yeah, and again, does it not go back to probabilities? I mean, if you've got this person,
So let me recommend a book, and I've talked about this on my channel, but let me recommend a book. I'm sorry, go ahead and finish.
That's just saying that you've got to understand what you've got and what the likelihood. I mean, the game itself is the probabilities. You don't, the more you throw, the more you threaten to give away the ball, et cetera, and situational situations. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know if you can see this. I may have to turn off my background.
I know, I hate when that, but we'll throw this up in a podcast first and figure the rest later.
This book changed my view and my life on football. Matter of fact, this book came to me shortly before I finished all of my production on Flash Football. There it is. It's called Hidden Game of Football.
Okay.
And where people make a mistake is they see it talks about fantasy football at the top, a winning edge for fantasy football. I hate fantasy football. I despise fantasy football. Yeah. I didn't buy this for nonsense about winning fantasy football. I bought it for how this particular group of people, Bob Carroll, Pete Palmer, and John Thorne, break down actual probabilities of who will score next and the probabilities of what a sack means, what an interception means, etc. I don't know if you can get it now. It's probably out of print, but this to me changed how I viewed football.
Interesting.
And when I watch football, I never watch it now without going through all these probabilities. When I watch on a Sunday, I go through these probabilities in my head.
Yeah.
So if LaFleur had read this book, he would have known, guess who the next team to score was going to be, even if he failed on 4th and 3.
Mm. Yeah.
The Green Bay Packers would have been the next team to score, even if they failed on that 4th and 3. Because Tom Brady would have got the ball back on his own 12. They would have still had 2 minutes to play with 3 timeouts. And Tom Brady most likely would have been maybe just conservative enough that the Packers would have got the ball back anyway on the 45 or the 50. And they would have still been the next highest probability to score, right? So kicking the field goal changed the probability that the next team to score would be the Buccaneers. See? But he hasn't read this book.
Well, plus, and now you've also got the emotion of the game going on.
Sure, you do.
So there's all that. I mean, that's the under pressureness kind of a thing.
Oh, but if you just ask me, if it's Johnny Unitas 4th and 3 in the big game, and I'm looking, I've got a quarterback that I have all the faith in the world in, I'm not taking the ball out of his hands. And I'll be honest, here's the other reason. If he fails to run for that, or he fails to complete a pass for that, he has to live with it for the rest of the offseason. Dave LaFleur is going to have to live with this the rest of his life. That he took the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands.
I mean, I'm going to get, you say what you will about Bradshaw. I mean, he's one of the greatest big game quarterbacks. They're going to talk about his TD to interception ratio, but when you saw him in that 78 season, and I still think Super Bowl 13 is one of the top 10, despite all the great games we've had, but all that Hall of Fame talent, I mean, from the coaches down, and Bradshaw, and you've got the questionable interference call, and you got this and that, but I mean, Bradshaw.
That's football. That's football. Yeah.
Yeah. You've got to, again, probabilities, and you factor it in. That's a cost of doing business.
Listen, that game, I mean, how many Hall of Famers were in that game? 15?
Something like that, yeah.
15 or 17 Hall of Famers were in that game, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about Frazier Ali.
Yeah.
Legendary teams, legendary game. There's just no question. Now, when you're watching it in 78, you're just rooting for the Steelers, and you're going, boy, thank God we've won 3 times. We got our chance on our 4. Yeah. But when you look back, you have real perspective on what that game, who those guys were, what that was. It's unbelievable. It's easy to hate Tom Brady right now, right?
I love him.
I do too. I look back one day and go, you know what? Damn.
You can't believe and he's not done yet. I mean, it's just. And and again, this goes back to the vintage era and that transition, in terms of understanding the game, what fans expect, what we expect as game players or designers. And, what it's that seeing the thing versus, kind of understanding, what are blocking assignments? How do you,
Right.
pick up stunts and whatnot?
Mhm.
I'm going to lose my train of thought here. What was I going to say? Darn it.
That's okay. That's okay.
It's got to do with what I was going to say, Staubach was, even coming back in that game. He was
Yeah.
whittling away at that.
Yeah.
Darn it, I lost my point. That was
So
a
you were
good one.
talking about the recognizing the 78 Steelers and the
Parody
big playability of Bradshaw.
and parody, and so what fans say, thank you. In terms of, the game feels slow, but there's a lot of art and going into that, like the old boxers go
Yeah.
that back there. A real box fest versus a Tyson is just like done.
Yeah.
Brady is defying, in Belichick too, that entire, we're going to enforce that 100 teams out of 101 are going to make the playoffs. There are going to be 3 wild cards next year, something like this. And, but really, when you see something that legendary, and how do you even put that into a game? He's like special, the
Right.
Tom Brady show.
That's it. Well, and how does anybody knock Terry Bradshaw's TD to interception ratio when most quarterbacks of those eras had poor TD to interception ratios? That's, Ken Anderson was the best pure passer in that division. Unfortunately, the Steelers existed.
Yes.
But again, Ken Anderson had the luxury of what? A system invented by Bill Walsh and Paul Brown. And Ken Anderson, had the luxury of Bill Walsh's so-called West Coast offense, who was technically the Midwest offense, right? Because, he brought that to, or I should say Paul Brown and he perfected it in actual, Cincinnati. He just took it to the West Coast and won Super Bowls with it. So that's a benefit of changing of the rules. It's a benefit of the changing of how the game is played, and a benefit of changing what you ask your quarterback. And I told my brother, I'm not a big Andy Reid fan. He's a horrible game manager, horrible clock manager. He is a genius X's and O's offensive guy. And Andy Reid, to me, his greatest claim to fame is he made Donovan McNabb a pretty dang good quarterback.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't dislike McNabb, but let's face it, that's how he trained, how he worked with this kid to play within this certain system. And he threw the ball 70 times a game when no one would dare throw the ball 70 times a game. That was pretty remarkable feat. But if Donovan McNabb was asked to throw 70 times a game in the traditional timing drop back system that existed pre West Coast offense, totally different animal, right? Yeah. Totally different animal. These guys are playing in the luxury, like the run and shoot. Mouse Davis's run and shoot changed. The run and shoot exists in every single offense today. Yeah. Right, in what are called option routes. These kids are given the right to make a decision at the line of scrimmage if they're going to go in or out, et cetera, et cetera. All of that came from the run and shoot. If not for the run and shoot, we don't have option routes. Option routes now are in every single offense in football. Mm-hmm. Quarterbacks very rarely just rely on timing passes, right? They always have a safety valve. They always have a check down. They know before they snap the ball whether they're even thinking about checking it down very often. When you watch Brady and Manning work in the end of their careers, they knew before they snapped the ball where they were going with it. They knew exactly what the defense was about. That takes experience, and young guys it's going to take 10 years for Mahomes to be that. His IQ will also match his talent, right? That's if he's not completely destroyed, because teams are the only way they're going to beat the Chiefs are to beat him up. So Andy Reid's number one plan, in my opinion, if he wants to preserve the Chiefs on a legacy run of multiple Super Bowls, he has to run the ball more and protect that kid at all costs, because teams are going to tee off on him. They're going to tee. The Bucs just showed you how you beat the Chiefs. You beat him up, you chase him around. Yeah. And it's fascinating.
Well, and that's what happened in the when the Patriots faced the greatest show on turf, right? We're not going to let you do what you do.
Yep.
Just when the quote physical defense, as opposed to a mental defense, I guess.
Well, remember, never forget who was coaching the defense of the 1991 Giants, who shut down the great Buffalo Bills offense. Mm. Bill Belichick was coaching that defense that beat the hell out of the Buffalo Bill receivers in that game. Yeah. He did the same thing 10 years later with the Patriots against the 2001 Greatest Show on Turf. He beat the hell out of the receivers, right?
Which again,
They won't let you do that anymore.
Well, well, the Mel Blount rule and all that. Well,
Right.
Atkinson and Tatum. I mean,
Yes. Yeah.
those are the Bruise brothers there and all.
Oh,
Well,
God.
again, that gets down to the probabilities of what you're trying to create. I mean, the game of football, even with, you've got different, like, you get the 46 defense and you got an answer and counter,
Yeah.
and the competition committee will change things to give fans a different experience, not necessarily better for the players, better for the fans, the scoring, but there's really not that much difference. And so when you go back to a gridiron,
Yeah.
GridZone turf, or those games, just let's get an experience here.
Right.
It's agnostic of team or era to a degree, right?
So what GridZone does that boggles my mind is it
Mhm.
captures the essence of the X's and O's matchup. I mean, like today, like yesterday, I'm playing that game. We have a playoff game yesterday. I played it on the channel. It's up. And the charts say, so I just narratively, for the heck of it, said Johnson's in the back. He lines up in the backfield with Llewellyn. We have a 2-back set now as the wide receiver lines up in the back. I just made it up. I just in my mind's eye saw this happen before the snap, right? I roll the dice, and the dice dictate that particular cornerback on that side of the field blitzes. I can see instantly from the die roll that Lou's blitzes. Now the matchup says he blitzes, he doesn't have the rating, and Johnson sneaks out of the backfield and catches a touchdown pass. You could see it happen. You could see that blitz, right? And what do you teach in football, pro football? What do they teach in pro football? They tell the linebacker who has the running back, right? This is what you coach in pro football. If the back stays in the backfield, you rush the quarterback. If the back leaves the backfield, you cover the back. It's 101. It's defense 101, right? They tell the middle linebacker, if Franco Harris stays in the backfield, you go after Terry Bradshaw, right? Make Franco block you. Go after him. If Franco leaves the backfield, by God, you better be going with Franco Harris, right? Okay. So last night in that game, and because I know this about football in my mind's eye, I see him in the backfield, and I'm thinking, of course Lou's blitzes because he thinks the kid's going to be blocking, right? And it turns out he gives him a little shake and bake, gets behind him, catches a touchdown pass. And the dice and the charts tell us the truth. The rating matchup told us the mistakes that were made.
Nice.
Genius. What it does is it creates an organic, actual play on the field. And I told Gary, when we replay games, we are literally just replaying what we know and what we've seen, and we're hoping to see it come out pretty close, right? We're hoping to see it different. We're hoping to see it close because we have expectations. So if I sit down to play the 15-1 Bears of '85, I have certain expectations of how they're going to destroy teams on defense, and that they better be close to that, and they better be in the Super Bowl, or I'm going to go, something's wrong. Okay.
Right.
We don't create history with APBA. We replay history.
All right.
With GridZone, every die roll creates history. I'm creating a first snap, a run. I'm creating a win. I'm creating a season. I'm creating an off season. I'm creating a draft. Because it's alive. We're constantly, every dice roll creates history. So it's a totally different experience than replaying APBA, right? Now I still want to see if Staubach can beat Terry Bradshaw in '78. We all do, right? We all want to see that amazing matchup, right? But we're not creating history. We're reliving history, right? And that's fine for a guy who is passionate about history.
Yeah.
But GridZone brought to me an experience I never thought I would ever have on a tabletop game. That is a live sport. It's like watching a live football game unravel that we have no questions about. And the way the ratings work, the way the dice work, etc., truly dictate an experience I've never had before. And that's hard. I mean, this is a guy who's created games. This is a guy who's been playing since I was 8 years old. I was a huge PC gamer and a huge video gamer. I have lots of experience. It's truly unique. It's truly unique. Yeah. And this is why draft leagues are big, right? Guys may not admit it, right? What they like about draft leagues, whether they know it or not psychologically, is they know what they want. So they know they want 1984 Montana. So I'm going after Montana because I know what I'm going to build. But what's the joy of a draft league? Well, I put it together. God, I hope it works. Right? Right? Or you can't wait to see what would Joe Montana look like, with this guy, right? Whatever the case may be. So draft leagues are fun because you have an opportunity to take the guy you want to do to execute your offense. but you don't know how it's going to come out when all the pieces are together. So what are we doing when we do draft leagues? We're creating history, not replaying history, right? And everybody knows that. I mean, everybody, they may not say it the way I say it, but everybody knows that, right?
Right.
You guys that play draft leagues clearly understand. I don't know if you play draft leagues. You guys just play. Okay.
Well, they do have, yes, they do. Our National Card Football League and the American Card Football League both have and the Suncoast Football League, I think they switched away from APBA, but they're one of the oldest, and they have a whole, if you listen to the Ray Dunlap interview about how they did their
What
draft.
are they playing if they're not playing APBA?
I think Suncoast went to Action PC.
They're using the PC game. Yeah.
Now I mean, they started in '79, according to their website. So I mean, and we interviewed one of their Kevin Ruge, I think, is years ago. But so I think they might have switched away for whatever reasons. I would connected with them there. But National Card Football League still uses the APBA set.
Yeah. If I was going to do a draft league, football league, it would be APBA. No question. No question. And the reason I say that is APBA is kind of the way the charts, the cards, and the dice work together versus, say, Stratomatic, where we have a level of strategy, chess match strategy stuff going on that's a little different, I think, when it comes to setting up drafting. Stratomatic baseball, that's a different deal, right? They draft for those probabilities of rolling that home run on a right. So Stratomatic baseball draft leagues are probability, really heavily probability, I think, driven, right? Ratings and dice. You do that with Stratomatic football too, but because of the nature in a draft league, if you're playing head to head of moving chips and changing those zones and things, it becomes really a chess match of play calls, right? So you still need the probability of completing a pass on an open, vacant, flat pass route. When I throw that flat pass and he's vacated it, I like to hope my dang quarterback can complete it, right? With that opportunity, right? If his defense comes up. So Stratomatic creates a very interesting dynamic because you're either going to get the offensive card or you're going to get the defensive card. And you don't know which one you're going to get. So if I roll a 1, 2, 3, it's on Montana's card. Hallelujah. But if I roll a 4, 5, 6, it's on Dick Butkus on the middle zone where I'm throwing the ball, and he's got Butkus, and he's put another linebacker in that zone. Now I'm up against two guys in the middle zone. Joe Montana's not even in the equation anymore, right?
Right.
So now suddenly Joe Montana's card has been erased, and I can't control it. So Stratomatic creates some fascinating dynamics that way. In APBA, I just don't know enough yet about head-to-head play, etc. What I know is when I sit down to play it, it feels incredibly authentic. And it gives me the vibe of that I'm playing, at least I'm playing the 58 teams authentically, right?
Interesting.
So, but that's, I'm pretty ignorant about APBA as far as number of games under my belt, right?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how it progresses for you. I mean, as opposed to some folks who outright dismiss, said nope, which is fine. No, that's cool.
Exactly. Some people like pepperoni pizza. Some people like sausage pizza. Hallelujah. I mean, I'm not going to try to talk you out of liking chocolate ice cream. I would be wasting my breath, right?
Well,
and that's one of the things that cracks me up. I don't want to spend one moment of my video time bitching about a tabletop game.
Right. I mean, and I love it that you and folks like you who look at it you'll go into a store or you'll go online now and see a shelf full of football games and say, yeah, I could do this. I'm going to do mine.
Yeah.
That I love, that's the beauty part of it. Keep them coming. Keep them coming.
And every one of them, they all have their reward, and they all have their benefit, and they all have their fans. And I was dead serious when I played APBA, and I looked at APBA. Again, I hadn't seen APBA since I was 29 years old.
Yeah.
I played 2 games with my buddy at the bar at the house. We were both mesmerized by the charts, having those. No, we had never seen a football game that said, hey, man, you're now inside the defense's 15-yard line.
Yeah.
And we were like, dang, now we got real red zone defense. We actually see the effect of the red zone. We actually see the effect of the tight field.
Yeah.
And, you can knock that stuff. People can knock that if they want to, but it means something.
Yeah.
It means something, especially to somebody who plays, watches, studies statistics, right? Nice. I've got another great book called the Pro Football Prospectus, and it breaks down, this just breaks down the 1998 year. And somebody says to me, Terrell Davis is a Hall of Fame back. Yeah, sure he is. Pretty remarkable back in a short period of time, what he achieved. But Terrell Davis, if you break down Terrell Davis in the long run of Mike Shanahan's Denver Broncos rushing performances, Shanahan, over a 15-year period, had 20,000 yards rushing. Every back that played for Mike Shanahan got 1,500 yards. Okay, so we talk about scheme, but we also talk about offensive line development. We talk about offensive line scheme, etc. Not just great backs. We talk about you can't. The thing that football cannot do well statistically is tell us where the offensive line meant the most versus the back. The back is credited with all the yardage.
Right.
We don't actually have a way of proving it, right? So the Football Prospectives has very interesting breakdown of statistics. So it breaks down what the Broncos did on 3rd and 1 or short, 4th and 1 or short over the course of the season. It'll tell you how many times they ran the ball on 3rd and 1 or short or 4th and 1 or short, goal line situations. They converted 38% of their 3rd and 4th and 1 runs, right? 98%. So what does that tell you about the Denver Broncos on 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1? They were guaranteed to get 1 yard.
Yeah, I mean, they had that synchronized. They knew what they were doing in that situation.
They were absolutely guaranteed. Now, was that a combination of Terrell Davis and Howard? I think Howard Griffith is a brilliant fullback and that great offensive line, all of that, right? Plus John Elway at the helm, right? Said, okay, fine. All that's legit. But if I made a football game and I wrote up the Denver Broncos in 98 and I had a rating that said on 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, they automatically get the first down. Do you know how many guys out there would scream at me? Right? This is why I tell you, you don't really want a replay game because we know who wins every replay game.
Yeah, that's it. And that's what, going back to the 50s and Dick Seitz, as I've gathered from all the folks we've talked to, because I mean, you've got an incredible, this game, what APBA does have is it came out 10 years, APBA Football came out before Stratomatic and the baseball came out in 51. So you've got guys who've been playing this game 60 years. I think they know about all the other games on the market, you know, and also.
And that's my argument. Today, if I discovered APBA when I was 12 instead of Statis Pro Football, there's no doubt I would be playing APBA and I would have never stopped playing APBA. Period. No question for me. And like I said, and that's the basic set. I could care less about the master set because I'm looking for simulating first down, second down, third down, fourth down against whatever base defense, and the index works for me. The ratings work for me. Can I start a different guy at halfback, fullback, etc.? Can I manipulate some of those numbers? I think one of the knocks on it was everything ends up in the B index.
Right.
You know, listen, when somebody says to me, everything ends up in the B index, you know what I say to them? Do you watch pro football? Right. Do you know the difference between one pro team and another? It's minor. That much, man.
That's it's right. You know,
now, if I'm playing a college game and everything is in a B index, I would bitch because we know college is extreme.
Way all over the place. Exactly.
So when you tell me we're going to have a fight between Frazier and Ali, I expect it to be a good fight. They're technically pretty equal, right? Yeah. We got minor details that decide the difference between Ali and Frazier, right? So when I see the B index, I say it's pro football. All those teams are only decided by a handful of players, Yeah. Bobby Bowden wrote a brilliant coaching football book, and he defined the difference between college and pro football. And this is proved out by two other books I've read about statistics. The average NFL game, winner or loser, is decided by, on average, 5 plays. Just 5 plays out of 125 plays. College football is decided by 15 to 20 plays out of 140 plays. Sure. The dynamism in college football is way off the charts as far as talent, quality of coaching, quality of team.
For sure.
Pro football, man, it's on any given Sunday. Yeah. Right? On any given Sunday. So when you tell me we're going to make a replay game and the Atlanta Falcons went 2-14 and I'm going to play them against the 14-2 team, I have expectations that the 14-2 team should beat the snot out of them. Yeah. But and because we have 16 game sample that tells us how bad Atlanta was over the course of 16 games. Yeah. But this isn't like baseball where we have a 162 game sample. Right? So what happens when a team goes 2-14 and the next year they go 8-8 and everybody goes, what a turnaround? No. Atlanta Falcons were 5 times 16 games. They were 55 plays away from being an 8-8 team the year before.
Right. Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's just where it's a game of inches, millimeters. I mean, you know, how many?
So the B index is right where most of these teams should be, unless they are extremely bad. The Green Bay Packers are a C index in my first game, and they should be because they had a 31 rating, right, against who did they play the first game? The Bears are up here in the A index,
Yeah.
and that's what it should look like because the Packers went 1-10-1.
Yeah, that's
and
it.
the Bears went 8-4, right?
Yeah, I mean there shouldn't be
Right.
there shouldn't be a lot of A versus C in a pro game. It's
No.
if you've got a couple of major injuries, like if you're
Yep.
two of your 5 pointers going, you've got to take that 2-point card.
Right.
That's all you got left.
Yeah.
Now you've got a little more of that making history, I guess. But
exactly. Well, and when somebody is going to critique in any game or any work, you're making some huge assumptions that the people who invented APBA in 1958 were ignorant of football.
No. I mean, that's
well, pardon me for saying so, but that's ignorant.
Well, the APBA for and again, for those who might not.
Yeah, it's changed. It has changed.
Right? Well, no, in terms of the company history, the baseball was the first game. It came out of a game called National Pastime. Dick Seitz found they didn't make the game anymore. Clifford Van Beek made this game National Pastime. Dick Seitz adopted it, changed it a bit. APBA Football is the first original APBA game.
Yeah.
That's what I assert. I mean, that's what I understand. But they had to kind of create a whole new that's what the game is supposed to do. Right. And people would go to him, as I think I was going to make the point before, that people say, well, you should do this and should do that, and you get like really granular, but then the playability is suddenly like you might as well just go out and play a game of football at that point.
Right. And that's what I said. What you want in my experience when I want to play a simulation down and distance football, I want it to be accurate down and distance football. Right. I want it to be accurate of what I expect from a 50% passer, a back that averages 5 yards a carry, certain expectations of their production. Right. And then, of course, I expect certain effects. If it's a head-to-head game and I'm going to make certain strategic calls, I expect it to have an effect on the game. If I choose a goal line defense, I expect it to adversely affect their ability to run regardless of my talent, but it won't totally guarantee I'll shut down a great back at the goal line. Right. That's football. Right. That's just the way football is. But when I sit down and I say, well, I need to quantify the sport as an actual simulator, you're not going to want to play it. It's going to be unplayable. It's going to take you 17 hours to actually execute the game. And so when I sit down to play a game, no matter what, whether it's my game, whether it's APBA, I want to see, I want to feel that authentic idea of what it is I'm doing. And I want the personality of the teams. I want Johnny Unitas to mean something. I want Lenny Moore to mean something. Exactly. I don't need Lenny Moore to get exactly 7.3 yards per carry. The odds are he won't. Right. And if he does, what do you need me for? Right. I can just flip open the stat books and look at Lenny Moore's 7.3 yards per carry. I don't need to replay it. Right. So I want there to be variables. So there's a reason to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I want, if I play the 79 Saints, I'm fascinated with them because they were 8-8 and they were on the cusp. Right. Thunder and Lightning, Muncie Galbraith. I mean, they were on the, but the defense just killed them. Right. I was just like, I couldn't do it, man. And I don't know how much you know about APBA basketball. The first I've been looking because I want to get their baseball and I actually been thinking about their soccer game because that looks remarkably innovative. It plays really well. There's some demos. We actually, yes. It looks really innovative. So most of my dollars are going to be going to APBA in the next few months or years, right? And I remember I was just thinking this because I just ordered a basketball game. I haven't yet played it or debuted it. And I'm thinking, dang it, where is APBA basketball? I thought they have to have an APBA basketball. Well, that's the funny part because you talk about not wanting to over simulate. Or the first game apparently was the big joke is that you can't finish. It's like my school. I went to the University of Central Florida. Our nickname was "You Can't Finish." And that's what the original basketball game was. It's like, because it really got down to dribbling. You're dribbling down the field. It's like, whoa, okay. There's a quick play chart, and we've talked about this even with Steve Stein. He's a game designer as well. And they released it in the mid '90s. I don't know if they're going to bring it back. That's a hard. Well, again, it's where you approach it. It's even like air war games. Going back to Avalon Hill. Yeah. Pilot to pilot game or squadrons of planes or the entire bomber group. It's where you want to start and what's your intent. And we need them all. Yeah. We need them all because I'm in different moods. The other day I had 20 minutes. It's second season express, baby. This weekend it's going to be APBA, baby. So. It's about time. It's about also what I'm in the mood for. I mean, listen, we don't eat the same thing for dinner every night.
You know, we don't, there's certain things that we need variation. And I think gaming is legit. It's for we need to have all kinds of different methods. The thing with tabletop sports, we sacrifice time for details. When guys can nail details and not sacrifice time, that's special. GridZone achieves that in a special way. Second Season Express does not achieve that. What it does achieve is it's able to utilize those remarkable team rating charts and give me a quick simulation of second season football, right? So what does Second Season Express do? It simulates second season football, not football, right?
Right.
Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
It is a shortcut for second season football. And that's great because second season football takes I would say 90 minutes to play a great game of second season football, right? So Second Season Express is designed to simulate second season football to get you to the fourth quarter or to get you to the overtime, whatever you want to play with the full sim, right? So it's designed for that purpose. I'm one of the few guys on YouTube that's made 50 videos actually just enjoying the shit out of Second Season Express
Nice.
for what it is, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't simulate football. It simulates second season, right?
Yeah.
And I would argue GridZone actually simulates a sport that we've never seen before, and it does so in a way that's remarkable. APBA is a replay game. Again, I'm certain it's a strategy game, but until I play more head-to-head, I don't know how much strategy exists in APBA, right? Now, with the Master Edition, I think there's a ton of strategy introduced. Right? Am I guessing right there?
Yeah, I think, that's.
Because you're adding blitzes and screens and draws and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and there's an audible option and things. And then, of course, there's a lot, and there are a lot of innovations that are out there too. We're going to be.
Don't you love the community? when fans fall in love with something, it's amazing what we get from that creativity. It's really remarkable.
Yeah, I mean,
you got to love the fans of these games because they make the games that much better.
For sure. That's Well, that Jason, this has been fantastic conversation. I think that's a great place to tie this one off for now. I cannot wait to watch you with APBA and all your games, really. I mean, you've given us a lot of food for thought in terms of games to try, compare against. So a great reading list. Yeah. Great.
Well, I've got a lot, but we'll stop with just a couple there. The physics of football is a must if you want to understand the real physics of whether Dick Butkus is a man out of time. No, I mean, these athletes were every bit as good. Was Jesse Owens any less a great sprinter?
Right.
No way.
There are certain things that you do. Bradshaw, as I understand, had the fastest 4.0 on the team. So, I mean, there's all kinds of.
The irony of Bradshaw is he had to overcome his own head coach, in my opinion.
Yes, that's
Chuck Noll was a genius. Chuck Noll drafted an unbelievably talented. I mean, that first draft produced 8 Hall of Famers.
In that couple of.
I think his 74 draft was it.
74 is the one you got. Swan, Stallworth, Webby, Lambert. Plus Shell is a free agent. Grossman's a free agent. Yeah.
And then he took all those pieces and put them together. And honestly, I don't think Bradshaw even had the confidence of Chuck Noll until what?
That's
I mean, let's face it. It was 74 before Bradshaw got really any kind of real opportunity to be the starter, right?
And they had him starting, and then in 74 they sat him for Joe Gilliam, and that's actually one of the great of football lives is Terry Bradshaw. You talk about we always talk about artists and their kind of mental struggles with the pressures of the game, but Bradshaw in particular, but he's got the 4 rings to prove it, folks.
Yes.
So whatever.
Oh, I love Bradshaw. I love Bradshaw as a man and as a football player.
That's
we used to own a photography business at the Broadmoor Hotel, and we would shoot all the conventions. And Bradshaw came in and did one of his motivational speeches for some convention one year. Wow. Holy cow, genius. This was probably 12 years ago, 13 years ago. He's funny. It's remarkable how smart and how funny he is. He plays the all shucks guy really well, but he ain't stupid.
No.
He's far from, you don't get where you're at and be a stupid man.
Nope.
Right. But I love Bradshaw. Are you kidding me? But the Steelers, this is the thing. I've said this before. The Steelers Raider rivalry, for instance, you cannot be legendary teams without legendary opponents. Ali is nothing without the Frazier fights, without the Liston fights, without the Ken Norton fights. You know what I mean? Where would Ali be if he fought a bunch of no-name scrubs? He wouldn't be Ali, right? Where would the Steelers be without the Dolphins and the Raiders? Where would the Raiders finally be after? I mean, 76. Thank God the Raiders finally won. Right, it justified their success.
Yeah.
But the Raiders had to overcome the monster, the Steelers, and then the Dolphins, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
And so I love that era. Those three teams made the NFL, I think, special in that particular era. And Dallas, you can't deny Dallas's success. Tom Landry, remarkable. Yeah.
And the Rams and the Vikings on the NFC side in the 70s. Yeah. Those sets of three Titans on either way side.
I love them. And that era for me is phenomenal. Yeah. I don't know why, I will say this about Apple. I think some of the reason Apple probably gets a little scuff from the community is they're expensive.
Yeah, well, there's certainly, that is has.
If you could get APBA seasons for $19, there would be so much love for APBA. I kid you not.
They're doing some lights. I just got my new box of cards here. I was going to do an unboxing video, but I was ranting about it. And well, it's fake. It's already open. So there's my. They did they're doing with some. They do light sets. So they still do these generic. They're doing some generic cards. So it's just like
that's genius. So you have an A quarterback. So you just grab the A quarterback.
Well, no, I think this is for like folks who didn't have statistics. So well, there were some other things too. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could work the system. I remember in the 2000 edition, the 99 season, they had 3 generic cards. So if you had like your lineman or anyone who didn't have a stat, whether that was a lineman, if he gets a fumble, recovery or something, then it's a flat, non-statistical representation. They had a generic, I think, for the running backs or something like that. I gotta go back to it. But in any case.
So how much do you play APBA?
Well, I dropped the website for about 5 years, and I'm just getting back into the. I did a few replays. My best replay, I think, talking about the 70s, was the 70 Raiders and 70 Cowboys. They only met once in the regular season. Never met in the Super Bowl. Right. And it ended up a 4 games Cowboys, 3 games Raiders. Incredible. Wow. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah, what's happening with me is when I play those fast games, I try to do full season replays. But when I play games like APBA, I have to scratch and say, how bad do I want to play a full season of because it will take me years to complete 58 full.
Oh yeah.
So and I'm determined to do it, but then it's like, why? I could just enjoy playing the playoffs. I could just enjoy playing the great. So I got to be careful not to marry myself to this idea of playing the full 200 game season or something, right? And
so that's the thing. Well,
72 game season, whatever it is. And meanwhile, if I was retired, what the heck? I probably would do it.
Well, now I see Greg Barrett. He's whittled his thing down to such because he was a military analyst, so he's getting things done efficiently. He's got it's mission control. He's Captain Kirk there, and he's got the games down about an hour 15, hour 20, hour 30.
God, that's amazing. Well, I found his videos before I discovered yours and a couple others, and he's the one that reminded me. You know what? I really liked that ball, but I ended up giving it away when I moved. Right. So I went out and bought it, and his videos literally inspired me to grab APBA again. Yeah,
nice.
And Dave Gardner's hockey inspired me. And I said, you know what? Obviously, the universe is telling me get APBA, so I went ahead and snatched both those.
There you go.
When the universe tells you, brother, don't fight it, right? Don't fight it.
That's right. Well, welcome aboard, and definitely. Where can we find you? You're on YouTube. You're in Facebook group for Flash. Anywhere else?
Yeah, I'm. That's it. I don't. I'm on Facebook as Flash Games, I believe, and it is a public. Facebook's changed a lot of its priorities now, so they don't need my approval to let people into the group, etc. So I'll have to kick them out if they're troublemakers now. That makes my work harder. It was easier just to say this guy can come in, this guy can't. No, I get why they're doing it because So you can come there and find me and ask to get in if it doesn't let you in, and I'll let you in. All of my files are available there. All of the stuff I do, I put up there. And here's the great thing about that community. There are amazing people making support stuff for my games now, which is just, it's remarkable. And they're sharing it, which is fantastic. One gentleman made a full 112 team NCAA universe for my football time. Literally every fake university, with ratings for every team. It's genius. And then he invented a quick play feature for my game that allow you to decide the scores for those games you don't want to play.
Wow.
It's amazing how creative people are. I love it.
It
And then, of course, my YouTube channel is where I try to share my positivity about the hobby and about these games. You'll rarely hear me be hardcore on these games. I know how hard it is to create.
Yes.
I know. And when you can't sit down with the people who invent something and ask them, what was your intent? Try to have a little, I try to have some recognition that they intended something. They may have failed. That's unfortunate. Or it may not be quite my cup of tea, but I am not in this. I am not interested in the arguments about why is good, why bad, why this best, why that. And I think most of the guys in the community are in the same boat, which is why none of us like to say the best.
Right. No. It's what does it do? What is it good at?
That's right. That's right. And so that's where you can find me. You can email me if you ever want my games. You're not on Facebook at barnabassmythe.com, all one word with a Y and an E. So it's Barnabas Smythe with a Y and an E at gmail.com. And I will email you any of my information, or you can chat with me privately. Send hate mail to somebody else for this video, because I am somewhat opinionated. When somebody says, let's have a candid conversation, I'll be a little more opinionated. On my channel, my goal is to be positive, always about everything. And yes, these are my opinions. They don't mean a damn thing, right? So understand that, folks. They're my opinions. There is no authority here, right?
Right. That's where we're all just talking about it. That's
right. That's right. So when I say we should take off the pads and play more like rugby, there'll be guys go, that guy's a nut. Yeah, I am. I'm crazy.
There you go. That's it. The argument's been being made. We should wrap it up. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Jason,
you, Jeff. I appreciate it, brother. I'm sorry I yammered your head off.
This has been awesome. I could keep going, but I think we'll save that for parts 2 to 10.
Yeah. Thank you. Cool. After I've played a few games, you got to have me back. We can just talk about APBA football.
Absolutely.
We'll just focus it on APBA football and my experiences with the actual game. That would be ideal. Right?
And we should play a game. We've done. I was in a 2014 Skype conference. Played folks out in Australia. It was an interesting, and National Card Football League. We'll bring them up. The Skype system. We actually had a tournament at the Football Hall of Fame in 2013, and they demoed it for us. So cool stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Via Skype.
Yeah, it's very easy system. And basically you call your set, they call a defense, you hit 1, 2, 3, you both enter it in the Skype window, you see what the play is going to be, and you roll.
Oh, I love it.
That's
genius.
Yeah.
That's genius. So simple. And everybody has the cards, so they know if you roll right, what to look up.
Yeah, and you've got the camera, you can have it right on the dice,
Yeah.
And then
I've been role playing via internet with people all over the world in role playing games for years. I've been playing online for 13 years in role playing sessions.
Wow.
So we play all kinds of role playing games and sports. Only a couple of times have I played a sports against Dell on his channel, My Game, live. We played a live game where he hammered me in my own game 55-10. He destroyed me in my own game.
Man.
So that was it. That was the last time I ever played Dell. I said, Dell, that's it. I quit, man. I'm never playing with you again.
That's it. It's like there are limits to. It's not.
Yeah,
fun
I do
anymore.
have some pride, right?
That's right.
Dell's like, what's football? I don't know anything about football. Yeah, I'll play with you. And then he creams me 55-10, right?
Yes. That's rule number 1. Do not beat the creator. Okay.
Right. Exactly. Oh, Jeff, man, this has been fun. I do appreciate it. I appreciate your site and having me on for an interview. And you got to do more of those aesthetic videos, brother, talking about the aesthetic of these games, because I love those boxes back there.
Oh yes, we're working on it. Yeah, this is all toward that's some nice 1969, the first saddle game. There's a lot of cool stuff. Those are
just these. You can't sit down to play without seeing these envelopes and not just be taken back to classic. It's just classic. It's classic.
And they used to smell great too.
The first thing I do when I get a new book.
That's it.
Enjoy the smell, baby.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, it's part of the whole thing. That's awesome.